You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Land. This podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts Tiffany Cruikshank and Katya Bach as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness.
The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.
Hello, Megan. Welcome to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. And I wanted to start by sharing one of my most vivid memories of you. It's from a Yoga Medicine 200-hour teacher training, and you were doing an evening lecture. And I don't even remember what the topic of the lecture was, but you took all of the teacher trainees outside underneath the shade of a big tree, and then you started taking them on this incredible journey, the hero's journey. You look like you don't even remember this. This was just so natural for you.
I'm so touched that you remember that. Like, I remember it vividly. Yeah. That's so awesome.
All of the teacher trainees' faces, they were just completely entranced, and you were taking them on this kind of fantastic journey. And it really struck me that the hero's journey is never straight track, full sunlight, unencumbered by obstacles. The hero's journey is always difficult. They have to go through darkness and face monsters, and it's through those setbacks that they come out the other side stronger, wiser, the person that they were intended to be. So it made me think that you are perhaps the perfect person to talk to right now when a lot of people are experiencing changes in their life that perhaps aren't what they hoped for or anticipated. So that's where I'm hoping we'll go in our conversation today. No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure, but finish making us feel really uplifted.
I'll do my best.
I'm sure you will. So I thought we'd start by talking about your yoga practice, because I know you're a big outdoors person, as I am. And I know you call yourself a recovering triathlete. So I know that you're somebody who relishes difficult things. So maybe you talk about what brought you to yoga practice in the first place.
Oh, wow. I started with meditation. So I always tell people, they're kind of shocked because meditation was the first thing that I got introduced to in Eastern philosophy. And it just resonated with me, and especially Buddhism. So I gravitated towards that. I was gifted a book by Lama Surya Das, and I just loved it. And so I started meditating in college. I was already an athlete. I was softball. I joke, I was softball, volleyball, D3 softball, volleyball player. And people look at me at my 5'2" frame and say volleyball, but yeah, but even in that, what you're saying is my job was defensive specialist. So I was a digger. I got down on the ground and I popped those balls up, and then they pull me back out of rotation. So even then, that was kind of something that I was really good at, was getting down deep and then making something out of nothing.
Awesome.
So I did that through college, and really I was this type A stress puppy, perfectionist. My parents were great parents, but they put a lot of pressure on me to get through college, because they hadn't gone through college. So of course, we have this generational stuff that gets passed on. And so I wore a lot of that stress pretty heavy, and had ulcers and headaches and things that I really struggled with. And so meditation helped me find a way to get space, to find a way to start to love myself, which I needed, because physically I just felt like I needed to beat up on myself. In your 20s, I think you're still so concerned about where you fit in the world, and what are you going to be doing, and what do you look like in comparison to your peers. And so I got into triathloning and pushing myself to to the nth degree, as far as I could go physically. And in that process was also having kids and started a family and started coaching, triathlon coaching. My degree was in kinesiology, combined self-study degree in kinesiology and business and journalism. So by my 30s, the only yoga I had actually been doing was Bikram yoga, because it was this hot, I felt like I really got stretched out and like bigger bang for my buck. Could go in and do a couple classes a week and be good. And then by my 30s, I had herniated my first 2 discs, and they don't even know. I had just been on the phone one night talking to a friend who was going through a tough time in her marriage. And the next day I woke up and I couldn't move my neck. And then sure enough, had found that I had 2 herniated discs, which over the course of 6 years ended up being every single disc in my neck.
Wow.
And I think that I was just, I was setting myself up for disaster. It was my posture that I was taking in my day-to-day work. It was the bike, arrow position on the bike, and not really paying attention to strengthening the muscles to pull it back. And I just put too much force on those discs. So whatever it was yoga, gentle yoga, restorative yoga, Yoga Nidra, all of that was the only thing that I could do. I couldn't even walk at first. The pain was so intolerable. And I just slowly kind of nursed myself back to health. And so yoga became a huge part of what I was doing. And I was also sharing what I knew of yoga with my athletes. So I had started at the time a women's triathlon group, purely because I saw women trying to do something really empowering and wonderful, but not knowing how to do it, not knowing the nuts and bolts to it, not knowing etiquette on the road and how to even ride a bike, much less be a part of a race on the road.
I saw a post of yours on social media talking about Iron Girl and saying that this was the thing that lit the flame, that you couldn't bear seeing people have to sort of dog paddle or swim on their back, or that they were being held back by things that were teachable.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And that was heartbreaking, especially for me to watch other women who really had the desire to achieve a goal, but didn't have the knowledge. And right, there's the hero's journey, right? Someone who has gone through the dark night of soul, has traveled in and done all this work, and it's been tough coming out the other side. It's about sharing that knowledge, right? And so I had been through triathlons, I had done it. I was like, I've got to share what I know. Mind you, I was not the best triathlete in the field. I wasn't necessarily the most knowledgeable, but I had a passion for it. And I just felt like I could connect with women and help them feel not put down. That we have a tendency, and I still get to work in this line of work, in the outdoor industry, where we call it mansplaining. I don't know if we have another term for it, but where we just put women down and we look down at them when they try to lift them up. And I think things are changing, but that was very much the way it was back then. And so to have an all women's group that was really about lifting them up and teaching them, how do you change a flat tire on the road on your bike? And a lot of women, that's very scary. So, so I introduced yoga to them, and I'll never forget one of my students, one of my athletes came in and she said, so I want you to teach me Ekapada Raja Kapotasana. And I was like, what is that?
I love it.
I had no idea. So I always joke with my students, like, I appreciate the history and the tradition that is yoga, but it's not where I started. It's not where I came from. And so philosophy definitely wasn't ever my strong point. Though I did come to learn what that word meant for one-legged king pigeon pose. But in the beginning, it was just about taking shapes and how do these shapes feel in our body and how can they help us feel better. And I think that's just resonated through over the years as I've been a teacher, using yoga as a vehicle for students to get into their body and to try to help them, empower them to use their bodies better and to listen. So yeah.
I know I think you said that there was an early experience with a teacher who said you were too strong or too muscular to practice yoga. Is that
Yeah,
true?
you have such a good memory. Yeah, so when I left Bikram, I was probably in my late 20s. I went to what I call was a real yoga studio that
All the
offered
Bikram
all.
teachers are just crying in their coffee now, like, oh,
I
come
know.
on.
I was like, I left and went to a studio that offered vinyasa and some traditional practices. And I had gone into a class and had been in there, and the perfectionist I still was just really trying to do well by the teacher. And she came up to me afterwards and just said, you're just too muscular, too strong for this practice, and you should maybe find something else to do, because you muscle your way through everything. And I'm enough fire and Leo in me to be like, no, sorry, I said some choice words for sure.
Some salty language.
Salty language. Yeah, the sailor in me came out, and I just was like, I'm coming back, and I'm coming back every single week. So I did, and she tried her best to ignore me the few weeks that she was there. And then she had someone come in and sub her class for a couple of weeks. Well, it was the sub that had come in, and she pulled me aside. I'm like, oh, here we go. She pulled me aside at the end of class and said, you are so strong. Your physique is so strong. She said, while everybody else, I'm trying to get them to hug in and feel strength, I want you to feel lengthening and moving out. Which was really an mind-blowing experience to me. It changed my yoga practice to think about it, because we talk a lot about hugging in and joint stability, and usually we want people to feel things turning on. Well, I was feeling everything turning on almost too much, and she wanted me to let go a little bit. And so as soon as she did that, like, my practice changed. I fell in love with yoga at that point.
I love that story, because as you were talking about the first teacher, I was thinking, I wonder what she was trying to communicate. I wonder if she was trying to communicate that you don't need all of that strength right now, and yada, yada, yada. And to hear the same or similar concept, at least, expressed in a way that actually made sense to you and was helpful. It kind of reminds me of an experience when I was teaching, and two yoga teachers came to my class, both of whom were recent mothers. And I was asking them, how's it been? What's the experience like? And the first one said, I tell you what, if you don't have children, you will never know true love. And I, of course, don't have children, and thought, if you believe that to be true, you're dooming me to a very lonely and sad life. That's a bit harsh. And the other teacher said, I know what you're trying to say, because I love my husband and I love my mother and I love my dog, but this love it's different. It just has a different quality to it. Similar concept, but the effect to me was just so different. It made sense. Like, of course, you'll love different people in your life in a really different way.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. Yeah, that message can be just a slight tweak to it can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it sounds like I know you have a heap of different varied backgrounds. You talked a little about your self-created degree. I know you do Thai body work. I know that you do a whole range of things, coaching and swim training. How did you get from practicing to teaching?
Oh gosh, it really came from, right out of the gate of college, I knew that I was going to be working with people doing something that inspired them. Whether it was, I did some fundraising even on the side. I got very involved with Major League Baseball and worked with in that industry, raising funds and still being very involved in sports. And at the time, it was disadvantaged youth and using baseball to help them. So I knew that was always going to be a passion of mine. And then when I started having kids, it was just, I just wanted to work with women. I wanted to give women an opportunity to find their fire. And I think that it's, you know, a friend of mine said, I said, what do you think it is? Like, why do I have this opportunity that I get faced with these things and I just keep going? And she said, because you always ask, how do I grow from here? And I do. Whenever something really, when the crap hits the fan, I give myself a few minutes to like steep in the fact that, okay, this sucks. This isn't what I had planned at all. But then it's like, okay, pull them up, pull the pants up. What am I going to do? How do I move forward? What is this teaching me? How am I growing from it? And that's that realistic optimism, I think, that helps us all be more resilient in general. And I just think we all have it. It's just we exercise those muscles at different times of our life. And some of us, it all happens in one foul swoop, and some of us exercise them over a course of a lifetime, but we all have it in us to tap in and do those things to overcome.
And so it was this desire to kind of help other people shine and other people grow that led you to teaching yoga. You knew you wanted to teach something, and it was the thing you were passionate about.
It was the thing that I grew to love. And I love triathletes, but being my own recovering type A, as I say, and then working with other type A's, I was like, I just really want to find a way to get those type A's to like chill out, like calm down a little bit and let go of some things. And so then it became, I really just want to do yoga all the time. And then I started finding things. Well, I pursued a 200 outside of a gym program. I had done a gym yoga program. So then I went a little bit further to go and do the philosophy and get deeper training. And then years forward from that, I found yoga medicine, and yoga medicine really was like, that was it. That was the connection for me. This is what I've been looking for, that I want to use yoga and all the benefits of yoga to help people, tune into their bodies, to help them understand their bodies more, to give them grounding and space and connection. And so I do that, and I get to do all the other things that I love, the therapeutic side, but also kind of this coaching element that I've always had working with people, whether it's nutrition or just life coaching or life skills. I guess you could apply that. But yeah, yoga becomes the vehicle because we know now, we've seen the research, yoga, meditation, breath work, are really powerful tools for wellness. So.
And you ended up owning and running your own studio, building it, creating this space for your community to come and grow in.
Yeah, we moved here to Atlanta from Baltimore. So that was part of the transition of letting go of my team, which was amazing. At that point, we had 80 women on our team, and we traveled the Mid-Atlantic doing races. And so I gave the team back to the women, and they ran it and kept it going. And I moved here to Atlanta, and it gave me the opportunity to figure out, okay, let's reinvent ourselves. And at the time where I lived, which is just outside of Atlanta, there was really no studios. There was one studio. It was a good bit of a drive for me, and very specific in what it was teaching. And I knew I was different. And I sort of got a following going very quickly. And I think within 2 years, we had enough people where we needed. I was tired of lugging bolsters and all the other things into all these spaces, and ended up in a space that we just grew into, which ended up being a large 3,500 square foot space with a second location just down the road, about 12 miles. That was doing really, really well, offering a whole range of therapies and modalities, from flotation therapy to massage therapy, yoga. And it was really at its height, was doing so well. It was such a part of the community that I'm so proud of, because it was unlike anything else in the county at that time.
And then fast forward to a global pandemic. And I know a lot of things changed for a lot of people, but especially for those who had brick and mortar in-person spaces. So could you talk a little bit about how things have changed for you over the past couple of years?
Yeah, that was not foreseen at all. I mean, we had just opened the second location. We were doing gangbusters. I mean, from a business standpoint, we were really expecting our best year yet. And I think when the discussion started, there was some thing in the back of my head. Was like, should I be concerned about this thing that's happening over in China? And it just felt so far removed. And then before we knew it, by March, we were just in it. And I had a lot of hope that we were going to be able to work around it. And boy, did we try. I reinvented every which way that I could think of to get people to get back in the studio. And there just wasn't the trust at that point from the people that felt unsafe. And then the people that wanted to come back, it just wasn't enough. And it was hard to be an owner at that time, and still is, because there's such, especially here in the States, I don't know if you're dealing with it or anyone's dealing with it around the world the way we are, where there's this, like there's just such a polarization about what to do, and do we wear a mask or not? And so as a business owner, to be stuck in the middle of having to say, well, I've got to do what's best for this group or that group, and I've got to try to make everybody feel comfortable and trust that I'm making a good decision. It just put us in a really, really tough spot. And then on top of that, how do we make a living doing what we're doing? And that was like you and I talking, we just had to jump into videoing. Like all of a sudden, I already had my toes in the water here, had to literally just say, to change gears very quickly and get online to offer. So thankfully I had that up and running so that my teachers could get in and film before everything shut down. And then we weren't able to film anymore in the location. But it was a tough few months. And then the decision where we just couldn't do anymore. And for me, it came at a time my marriage had already been struggling for the last 3 years. We had separated once before, and then it just all came to a head. And so, at the same time, I'm closing a studio. At the same time, I'm trying to make some big, huge life decisions about where am I going to go. And I just literally left. I think in November, I was like, who the hell am I? Because everything that I identified at that time just felt stripped away. And I really found myself needing to take a break. And as a single mom, with a business that had gone out of business, I don't have a break. I have to keep moving. So what can I do to keep myself moving? And it's all the things that I believe in, that I give my students. It was get your butt outside and walk, get in nature, soak and absorb yourself in it. And I walked every single day. I meditated every single day. I cut my schedule back as much as I could to give myself space. And I think that's huge especially for studio owners or teachers that are just, that they can't stop, because if we don't work, we don't make money. That's our living, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that must have been the hardest possible time to make that decision, when you must have been really apprehensive about your financial state, to be paring back your work responsibilities then. That must have been hard.
Yeah, so much to
Mm,
go from, a double income and a business that was in six figures, that I was making an exceptional income at, to single mom. I'm talking, at the time we were doing $10 a class, trying to just get students in. This was still November. We're in the midst of the pandemic, just really hot and heavy in the winter where I live. So it was really a scary time. And the only thing I could control, and I had some of the sweetest neighbors, but I literally would go for a walk. And sometimes that walk would include me just, tears are just streaming from my eyes. And I'm thinking, this is grief. I am grieving. I'm grieving business. I'm grieving a marriage. I was actually, and we've talked about this, I was grieving my mom, who passed less than 2 years before. So like, even that I just kind of shoved aside, because as a business owner, you keep going. And so I just had to find ways to give myself that space to process it. And then sleep, making sure, I was so huge on my sleep. I was checking in with my HRV all the time, just to see, am I taking good enough care of myself right now? Because literally I'm the only one. Like, I have to do these things, but I have to take care of myself, so I don't get sick or worse. Right. So
yeah.
it was tough, but I look back now and I think, for me at the time, I worked right up till Christmas, and I decided that all of this change, I was going to create new traditions. And so I set new traditions with my family. I set some new traditions with my students. And it was right after the holidays where I stepped out, went away, and spent some time, in the Smokies hiking. And I was just, the shift happened right there, where I'm good. Like, I'm good. I've got this, one step in front of the other. And literally, we get on the mat, we go for a walk. It just teaches us that we can do these things. We can take one step at a time and not need to drink from this. You've heard me say it. I say it a lot. Drink from the fire hose, like this. It's coming at us. We can slow that down. We really can.
So I feel like I'm already pulling some themes out of what you've been talking about. And the first one is that you're really willing to spend the time, when you said earlier about when the crap hits the fan, taking a moment to just actually feel the grief or the frustration or the anger or the fear or whatever it is. I remember a post of yours on social media that I've copied, because it's so raw and so personal, that I think this is one reason why you're the perfect person to speak on experiencing setbacks. This has been September 25, 2020, about the closure of your studio. And you wrote, "All the feels today. I'm exhausted. So much work to close our business. I'm sad. I'm angry. All the things. We were so hopeful as we opened 2020, but then everything changed. The industry changed. People changed. And we exhausted everything to make it stick. My eyes and heart hurt for everyone who loved this community." So the first thing that I've been pulling out of what you've been saying is this capacity to actually experience what you're in, and not immediately try to shift gears into fixing or improving, but just feeling the crapness of it, whether that's anger or sadness or fear or whatever. And then the next thing that you said that really struck me was stepping back. My instinct, I think, would be, I've got to do something. I've got to fix this. I've got to do more. And yours was to do less and to give yourself space. And then the third thing was really taking care of yourself, getting outside, moving, checking on the quality of your sleep and your heart rate variability. So Can you talk through some of those themes and others that we haven't gotten to yet that give you this capacity to turn the crappy times into growth?
Yeah, I love that. I haven't read that in a really long time, so that brought a
I'm
lot back.
sure.
And especially because when I shared that, nobody knew the state that my marriage was in. In fact, we'd gone on a 20th anniversary trip, but we were already done. And so there was that whole layer on it. And literally, the 20 something in me would just push right through. But I have come to learn that when it is like that, the best thing to do is not need to know. There's a great poem that I share when I teach meditation called Needing to Know. And it's by John Hyder, The Tao of Leadership. It was in his book. And it's about when you don't understand what someone's saying, don't try to look harder and furrow your brow and like try to grasp with every word. When you don't know what is happening, be still and know. And there are times where I print that, and that was one time where I printed that poem and I left it. I love to put things in my shower so that as I'm washing what little hair I have, I read it over and over. And it's such a great reminder that I don't need to know right now. I don't need to have the answers right now. And that was, in that moment, was literally what I knew was just sit with this. There's a lot of emotion coming out of it. There's a lot going wrong. And people aren't comfortable with you being in your suck either. When I notice, especially my students, I'm normally a very optimistic, upbeat person. I'm smiley. But it's been tough. And when I'm not, I can see the people around me who are like, oh, but you're going to get through it. You're going to pick up. And like, they always want to find the silver lining and just help you mark that cloud. And I always am the one that reminds them, like, no, it's okay for me to be here. It's okay for me to be sad, to not feel like I want to teach right now, to not be happy or to be angry. Like, oh gosh, like it's okay for me to feel those things.
And knowing that you'll get through it and come out the other side doesn't mean that you can't be in the crapness of it right now.
Yeah, but so interesting to watch human nature, where we want people to get better because it's a reflection, because otherwise we kind of have to tap into that feeling that they have and remember when we experienced it, and that's icky. Like, oh, like I don't know. So we push those people away when they're in their places. I call it the suck, when we're in the suck. And so my job, I always think, is to remind people, like, no, it's okay that I'm here. I'm not going to be here long. Don't worry. But just let me have this for right now, because that's how we're going to process the emotion of it. So yeah, that is literally how I did it. And then I have things that I do that I really tell my students, that are, especially my clients, when I meet with them for the program that I call it Yoga RX. And I know a lot of us have a similar program that we offer in the yoga medicine world, but I have, for 20 some years with my athletes, especially, I get up early. I get up before everybody else in the world gets up, so that I own my day. And I've done that since my kids were babies, because I saw right away how that shifted my day when somebody else started it for me. So I've always gotten up early. And I have rituals that I put in place. I have a tea. I read, I journal, I do a stream of consciousness journaling every single day, for just 3 minutes. I listen to music and I dance. I might do yoga, but I definitely turn the music up and dance for a little bit. And I just have that morning practice that's set in stone. And then I I got into doing 5 Things Friday on social media, which is kind of fun, and so many people do it. And I love that because I was inspired by a blog years ago that was doing gratitude journaling and writing thank you notes that I thought, oh gosh, that's really achievable for me. Like I couldn't
If
even do
there's one person out there who hasn't come across 5 Things Friday, maybe you could just explain it for them quickly, because I love it.
So 5 Things Friday was inspired by a blog called Today's Letters. And so 5 things on Friday that you are grateful for. And it can be as simple as your breath. And as silly as just a TV show that made you laugh, it can be anything. And I tell people sometimes it's one of the children, not all 3 of them, that it can be that every week it changes and it's just the things that you're happiest for. And it's not about necessarily not acknowledging that there's stuff in our life that we don't like. And it's not this optimism that's just blind, which I think sometimes gratitude gets a really bad rap because it's just so much positivity, right? And that's why I think I try really hard to be real on social media. And so my 5 things is about, hey, yeah, it's tough. Life is tough. We're all in it. We're all in this pandemic. We're all going through stuff and struggles. But we can think of 5 things that we're so grateful for that happened this week. And I'm always so grateful that people have picked it up and done it because I just get so busy, especially right now, just managing all the things that I sometimes forget to share what my 5 things are on social media. It doesn't mean that I don't have the practice.
Wait, just because you don't share it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
It doesn't exist. But it's so nice. And, Yoga Medicine does it as well on Friday. And I can think of a number of yoga medicine teachers that post and do it. And I love it. It inspires me. And some days when I'm not feeling like 5 Things Friday, like I could put a choice word in there. I look and someone like a yoga medicine teacher like April Geary, or Erica, my friend Erica, who's a teacher, or Ruth, they post it and I'm like, oh, y'all inspire me to get my butt up and post something as well. So it's just a great way to connect and to share and to remind ourselves that even in the suck, even when things are just good and they're just this kind of equanimity across the board, we can be thankful for some things in our life. So
one of the things that I often see you post gratitude for is community, friendship, connection, relationships. Is that part of what helps you grow from challenging things?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I really believe that that's a big part of our overall wellness is how we connect with others, and not just partnership and whoever it is that we want to partner with in this life, but like the friends that we surround ourselves with and the relationships and how we nurture those relationships. I'm one of the things that I have talked about that I do is I've written a manifesto of the areas of my life. I call it the areas of inquiry, of what's important to me. And it's travel and friends and my kids, motherhood and my finances, the teacher I want to be, my work, and the partner I look for. And I literally have written out 2 pages of what I want from those things in those areas. And a big part of that is to be a good friend, to communicate and make sure my friends know that they're loved, to support them in the ways that they support me, to be a good listener, and to just reach out. And so I try every now and then. I remember that I've gotten bad about dropping little love notes in the mail, but I do try to send snail mail every now and then to friends. I find at least one person every month that I can send something to that I haven't communicated with in a while, because I think we all need that. I think the snail mail has gone away, and it's just, who doesn't love getting something surprised by something either in the mail or at their door. Just to know that you're thought of is really special.
Yeah. So you've brought out a bunch of really practical things about being in the suck, being willing to be in the suck, but space for duality, that the bad times aren't monolithic and the good times and gratitude aren't monolithic either, but there's space for the both of them to coexist. You've talked about the importance of rituals and doing the things that help you feel like the aspects of your life that you can control, you are controlling, you're sort of setting the tone. You've talked about movement and taking care of yourself physically. You've talked about gratitude practices and relationships. Is there anything else that you would sort of add to that mix of things that you do to help you turn challenges into opportunities to grow wiser and stronger?
Yeah, no, I think you got it all. I definitely believe that we have to move. We have to have these practices in place. And maybe it's not exactly the things that I do, the rituals that I have for my daily morning or my routine. Um,
Not everybody wants to get up before everyone else in the world, that's for sure.
No, and that's the thing I find really important when I work with clients. For the most part, I've never had someone, when we've looked at their schedule and their circadian rhythm and we get to know their circadian rhythm, there are people who definitely benefit from staying up and sleeping in a little bit later, and they can do that with their jobs, and that works. And then there are others that benefit from getting on that rhythm and waking up a little bit earlier. But all in all, being the one that gets up and having that time carved out for yourself to be creative, to connect with something bigger than you, whether it's prayer or meditation, but to find those moments. And then journaling, which I just think can be just such a beautiful outlet for your feelings and your emotions as you try to kind of cull through them or work through them and figure yourself out. So I think when we talk about the suck and we want to move forward through it, that stream of consciousness journaling is a great way to start to process and move us through. And in my hardest times, I let people know I go to therapy. When it's really bad, I go find somebody. I don't want to put that burden, we have friends, but there's only so much. And I just think that the value of finding a good therapist to talk to is really important for those healthy check-ins and how you're doing. But I hands down would tell you that I really believe that as humans, we don't walk enough, we don't move enough. And there's so many benefits to walking and movement. And I make sure that I do at least 10 to 15,000 a day. And I have to, because I notice what that does to my mind and my body and my irritation level. I mean, I can meditate all day and my body is so used to it now that my heart rate variability, it will chill out during it, but then it'll go right back. But if I'm out moving and walking, I notice the biggest change and the biggest shift. And being in nature, I think that we have to spend more time out in it because, Howard Kleinbell coined the term ecotherapy back in the, I guess, 80s or 90s. And I think that it's us recognizing that nature's in us and we are in nature, and being out in it helps to connect us and ground us in a way that we can't find anywhere else. And I know I draw a lot of reserves from being out in nature. So
You will not get any argument from me on that front. I feel exactly the same about getting in touch with the season, the day, perspective. For me, I often go somewhere high so that it feels kind of like, oh, I can see clearly now. But I'm really pleased that you also mentioned therapy, because I feel like there's a pressure in the yoga world that we should be fully formed, and especially if we're also coaching. And I want to ask you about your yoga RX in a moment. But there's this pressure that we should already have all our stuff sorted out, that we shouldn't need therapy. But of course we do. Of course we're not fully formed and we need help as well as everybody else does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on. I find it really fascinating that, and I'm sure that therapists get the same thing, that people expect them to be perfect in the fact that they've got it all figured out, that they don't need to see anyone. And I think that absolutely
Mm.
we all need that person to be able to bounce things back or to see things from a perspective that we don't see, and ask questions. And so that's why I see therapy being so key. It becomes the mentor, right? The guide in that hero's journey,
Mm.
of helping you kind of get through those dark nights of soul. Is who's guiding you, who's your Obi-Wan to get you around to the other side. And so yeah, I think we have to normalize that. I'm all
Yeah,
about it.
100%. So
Mhm.
in your Yoga RX program, this is one-on-one programs, and from the description, it looks like you're really looking at people holistically, physical challenges, brain health and resilience, their immune system. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you look at in that program?
Yeah, so I offer everything, and I when they come to me, they're like, I just don't know, I just know I need a change. And the first thing I say is, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on wanting to change? And anyone that's below a 7, I really make them go back and think hard and fast if they can commit, because I've just found in the work that if you're not over a 7, or you're not 8, 9, 10 for wanting to make changes, then you're not going to do the work that you need to do. You're
Life
just
will
not
intervene.
ready. Yeah, there'll be something better that will take its place. And so I only take those 8, 9s, and 10s. I just gave it away. So now everybody that wants to work with me will
Oh,
be,
I'm
oh,
definitely an
definitely.
8.5.
But the and I've had one person that I said, I want you to go back and really think about this, because you're asking me to help you commit to something, and you've got a lot going on right now. And she actually ended up pausing some things and then came back and was fully ready. But so that's the first thing, is how ready for change are you? But we look at things like, how are you sleeping at night? Do you have a meditation practice? How often are you moving? I have one client I've worked with for 7 years. She's CEO. She drives. She was moving less than 2,000 steps a day, and we upped that and made some big significant changes. And I know that for a fact that's a part of what's gotten her through the pandemic, what's helped her stay focused and keep her mind clear and creative. And so we look at all those things. And then there's the movement side, where my background, I do postural assessments, one-legged postural assessments as well. Like, how do they balance? What's going on in the body? Movement assessments, testing muscles. And we do that. But I do find that if sleep and actual movement and walking are a given, if those things are being taken care of, then there's this kind of cascade effect down to everything else.
Mm.
And so I usually hand them a form that's called the inquiry of life, and it's all these different areas that they rate. And from that, we kind of figure out what's important to you and what stresses you out, and where there's a combo where the two meet. Those are the areas we want to focus on. And sometimes it's a surprise for people to learn, like, their relationships really, they feel like it really suck right now, and they just aren't able, and it's also stressing them out. So then it's like, oh, wow. So that's probably where we should focus.
The big
And
levers.
yeah.
Mm.
So sometimes it's not at all what they anticipate coming in to work with me. So one client in particular came in, and this was an issue, was friendships and connection. It was also service to her community was a really big, was really important to her on both sides, and really was stressing her out that she was so low on the scale of it. And so we came up with this idea that she would volunteer at a local CSA, which is farm, community supported agriculture, and she'd make friends. and be out there working in the dirt and providing a service. She freaking loved it. It was life-changing for her. And it wasn't the movement that she was expecting. She wasn't, and I'll tell you what, mentally, she felt so much better about what she was doing. And in her body, it changed some of her perception of pain and her referral to how she felt in the skin she was in, because she was moving a lot more and playing in the dirt and being way more active on the weekends. And I think as humans, we just kind of, we forget, going back to this whole thing about connection, we forget that this can be a big, big part of our health. And for her, in that case, it was. So I look at those areas of inquiry, identify those first, and then we go from there. And a lot of the times it can be nutrition, it can be movement based. They want to eat better, they want to move better. But sometimes there's these outliers that surprise me, where it's about connection, or it's about finding some connection to the community, being of service. So yeah, that's what I do.
I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds like exactly what people need to be seen as a whole person, and not just what they're eating or what exercise they're doing. I think that sounds fantastic.
Thank you. I think we all sit down and want to think, well, if I could just eat better, well, what's going to get us to put better food in our body in the first place? Well, when we're happy, I find when I'm happiest, when I'm moving, when I'm connecting, I want to sit down. I want the best things for myself. So, and that's different for everyone. It's going to vary, but, I do think they all support one another. I've said they all, the touchstones, as I call them, they all inform on each other. Like, hey, like this shoulder needs a little attention. The body and the mind are amazing, but it's all connected. So yeah.
So I think there's some fantastic advice in there for people to pick out, whether that's about taking care of themselves physically, or taking care of their relationships, or creating a little bit of space in their mind through meditation or being in nature. Is there anything else, any other advice that you'd give to somebody who's sitting in the suck right now, who's in the middle of the setback and can't yet imagine the success to come?
Yeah. Gosh, it would be like talking to myself, and it just is, you're loved. You're going to get through this. This is hard. But every day is going to be different, and start one foot in front of the other, one breath after the other. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to lean on people. Don't be afraid to have moments where you have to say no, or break down, or not go to class, not teach a class. I think that was a huge moment for me. It was, okay, I can't get the space right now. I need to sub. And that's where we lean on our friends that can come in and help us. It's hard to be a teacher when you stand up in front of a classroom and you feel a responsibility to your students, and you don't want to let them down. You don't want to bring any of your stuff in, but good grief, at the end of the day, we're human. And we do the best to keep that in under wraps, but also that vulnerability with our students. I tell when I'm training students or teachers to be teachers, I say, vulnerability is important. Make sure you've worked through whatever it is that you're going to share with your students, so that you're not breaking down in front of them and you haven't done the work. But we're human, and, life happens, and sometimes you do your best. And so just a reminder that you're doing the best you can in that moment with what you have. And it doesn't define you. You're just growing from here.
Love that. So I know you have a lot of things on your plate at the moment. You're teaching in person, you're teaching online, you've got your Yoga RX program, you're working in retail, you've got a whole heap of juggling balls in the air. If people want to learn more from you or find out more about what you're up to, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, they can connect with me on social media, or they can find me at my website, which is resetwithmegan.com. And I connect with people and do Zoom sessions, and set up these kind of yoga RX sessions. Locally, I do massage work and more hands-on work in those yoga RX sessions. But I have a couple different studios that I work with that I get to drop in if you're local. But Zoom is great. So I work with people all the time. So yeah, they can find me at the website, or they can find me on Instagram, Facebook, coming soon, TikTok.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your expertise so generously. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rachel. I really enjoyed doing this, and I'm so excited to see Yoga Medicine roll all of this out and to see all the other speakers. I can't wait.
Woohoo! Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you liked the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you got something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com. Check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine, or you can email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being part of our Yoga Medicine community.
The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.